Welcome, you're listening to Wisdom Synergy, where ancient knowledge meets digital truth, where precision reveals the hidden, and where the architect is always watching. I'm your host, the Grim One, waking up from the program, connecting the dots, and breaking the system wide open. This isn't just a theory, this is a download.
Got muted. I'm doing well. How about you?
All kinds of weird stuff going on here, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry about that.
No worries. No worries. Hey, man, technology is technology.
I'm not very high tech, to be honest with you, so it's...
I don't believe it.
Right on. It's all new to me, so... which, again, thank you for being here on Wisdom Synergy and, gracing us with your presence.
Hey, I'm excited. I like your background and looks like you got a cool vibe going, some good stuff going in the background. So I'm sure it'll be interesting. Plus, you got some guitars on the wall. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. That's how I stumbled across you, actually.
Okay.
I was on YouTube and I seen what you were doing and I was like, wow, really interesting to me. And so I reached out to you and here we are.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit of like how you got into doing some of this sound healing and such?
I would love to say it was part of my master plan in life, but it really wasn't. It was something that kind of got presented to me, as I was kind of going through on my journey. I jokingly always tell people I'm like a recovered CEO, man. I was in the high-tech world for 19 years and had gone all the way up to the top of the ladder, and I realized, you know what? I'm not happy. I'm not content. I'm not fulfilled. So I kind of left to find my purpose and create a life with more meaning. And, so music had always been part of my life since high school. But it was just something I did for me. So I never had this like, I want to become a rock star or anything like that. That wasn't really part of my deal, but I just loved to play for myself. Never got out and gigged, never did any of that stuff. And then, I made an album back in the early 2000s, and that album ended up getting in the hands of a former consultant from NASA who, quote, discovered harmonizing frequencies in my music.
Wow, man.
So kind of threw me down a path that I had never thought myself to be on.
Right. I feel the same way actually right now with your story. I wasn't expecting all that.
There's all kinds of interesting nuances.
It sure is, man. It's a really cool story you have. So that's what inspired you to start this whole thing was your passion for music to begin with, right?
I can't even say that.
Okay.
It was like,
it felt natural to you to just follow, because it's kind of the same story I have in a way, was because, but my vision was more of being like the rock star and such, you know what I mean? Like, I guess when I was a kid thinking, but it was just something that always called me to it. I was always drawn to the guitar, and picked it up, put it down, picked it up. I was young and in and out of it, you know what I mean, for a while.
Yeah. And
then when I really committed is when I really started to learn a lot about life. So this is what kind of led me to this, and the vibration, like feeling, the vibration and things like that. It taught me more about life than I think anybody could have ever told me, showed me, it was that hands-on and learning on like a personal level.
Yep.
So it was really a eye-opener, you know what I mean? Like, wow, like I said, it taught me so much So that's why I was kind of really interested in what you do, you know, well, and what's the science behind it, you know, and things like that.
Well, you know, I think like a lot of us, I'm sure with you probably have a band that ignited this spirit within you. Like, dude, I got to go play.
Yeah.
And for me, it was Pink Floyd. You know, I'm like,
oh yes, indeed.
I got to learn how to play the guitar. You know, the comfortably numb lead line and
solos
stuff.
and stuff, right?
Yeah, I'm like, damn, it doesn't get any better than that. I need to learn how to play this thing.
Yeah.
But that was it. It was just it was my own equalizer. It was kind of like my own way of dealing with the stresses and the highs and lows and the twists and turns of life.
Yeah.
And you know, so I left the corporate world to actually become a motivational speaker. And initially, I was doing speaking in golf events. And after I'd been working with a speaker coach for like maybe a month or two, I sent her my CD. And so she calls me up. What the hell is this? I go, well, what do you mean? It's my CD. She goes, you didn't tell me you played guitar. I'm like, no, what is that going to do with my speaking? She goes, everything. You're going to do music. You're going to do keynote concerts. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. Because I never wanted to play in front of people. It's like,
okay. So you were more on the shy side a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I could speak in front of 1,000 people and feel like a fish in water. Put a guitar in my hand. I became like a shy kid. And so I ended up doing a keynote. It was called Play Beautiful Music Throughout Your Life. And before I knew it, nobody ever called about the golf thing. Everybody wanted the keynote concert. So I was getting booked for associations and stuff. And then getting connected to these scientists, really kind of a random connection. I was playing at one of my wife's friends had a wellness center. And I played for their open house. And after I'm done playing, the woman that runs the center comes up to me and she goes, you know, I hear these tones in your music. And I'm like looking at her like, man, this lady's going to get weird, man. I could just tell, you know. And then she got like right up in my face and she goes, and nobody can hear the tones but me. And I'm like, man, yeah, I heard some tones too back in the 80s, listening to Pink Floyd, watching the Lava Lamp. We heard some tones, you know. Yeah, and she goes, no, I'm serious. She goes, I know these scientists. Give me your CD. So I gave her a CD. And next thing I know, I'm invited to a lecture on quantum physics and consciousness and wellness and how to take humanity to the next level. Never heard of quantum physics or anything like that. And I was blown away. I'm like, I realized that night who we see in the mirror is the tip of the iceberg of who we really are.
Yeah, yeah.
And then halfway through the lecture, they have me come up on stage and play guitar. And I see people's physical energy shift in front of my eyes, increases in strength, flexibility, endurance, coordination, and balance. I was like blown away. Quite honestly, kind of a little freaked out. You know, I'd never seen anything like this. Yeah. And so I kind of went home, not really sure what I had experienced. And the next thing I know, Dr. Jones gives me a call and he said, hey, we've done preliminary research on your music. You have these harmonizing frequencies coming through your music that actually tune and harmonize listeners' energy fields. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't understand what all this means. He says, well, he goes, in essence, it gives the ability for people to restore harmony to their energy, even when they're being exposed to things like their technology, 80,000 man-made chemicals in air, food, and water. And now you look at it, Wi-Fi, smart meters, 5G, 4G, 3G, all these things we're being bombarded with that are disrupting our energetic field. He said, your music has the ability to restore harmony regardless of what people are being exposed to. And he said, we want to buy 1,000 CDs from you and start selling them. I'm like going, okay, I don't understand anything you said about energy, but I understand that. And that's how I got into the field.
Man, that is an awesome story.
Like I said, I couldn't have planned it. I couldn't have planned this in 1,000 years.
So, you know, me starting this podcast was based on like intuition and following my heart kind of thing, or whatever you want to call that. Mm-hmm. Something was saying like start a podcast. And I was like, well, I don't really have a reason to start. I don't even know anything about podcasts, you know? But it was like, I had all the things I needed to start one. So I was like, there's nothing to it but to do it. You know what I mean? So I started it off of intuition, and it leads me to you, which is amazing because of your story, and like it just ties in so perfectly to everything that I'm about, pretty much. You know
I
what I
love
mean?
it when
like,
that happens.
Yeah, it's like, do you ever like you feel like you know things before you know things, or something like that kind of thing? Like,
you know, and I think that's
like there's
this is what we've been trying to get people in connection with for thousands of years. You know,
okay.
In the old days, it was done through yoga and meditation and ancient practices, and then, you know, life got busy and noisy and loud, and people got disconnected. And let's face it, we go to schools that only focus on developing the thinking, critical thinking, analytical mind, as opposed to getting connected to what's behind all that.
Yeah.
You know, and
absolutely.
And as things have gotten busier and more things have been put into our environment, you know, we don't hear that sweet, gentle voice like we had the potential when we're out in nature or have been sitting in silence, or perhaps if we have a meditative practice, we can get connected to it. Yeah. So, you know, and I think I love that what you shared, because we have to begin to realize that the genius, the mastery comes from within us. And if we have the courage to listen, hear, and heed, it's going to take us on an amazing journey, you know. But most people would probably have like some of the thoughts you shared, and then have that conversation, which you might have, you know, what the heck do you know about podcast or technology or anything? You can't do that, you know, and then they don't follow through. And, you know, amazing things can open up when we heed to the calling.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with that. And I appreciate you saying that. So my very first episode was actually, you know, I believe in like a magic power that we have that is like, you know, when you believe in yourself, you know, is like the very first step, you know what I mean? But if you would have told me that when I was a kid, I wouldn't have believed you, you know what I'm saying? And guitars what taught me that. So I'll start from the beginning. I had a theory about, because I'm into ancient histories and uncovering, you know, lots of things. I don't know if you looked into the channel at all, but
I did.
Cool. You know, and I really do appreciate you being here. I think it's so cool. You're my very first guest, actually.
Awesome.
But the first episode was about, you know, believing in yourself, pretty much. And I was so nervous, and I still am now, nervous and distracted and all this stuff. But my message still came out. You know, like what I was still trying to get out still came out on its own. And, you know, that was kind of like, whoa. And it was like, I want to prove that this magic is real and everybody is capable of doing the same things. You know, it's not quite like manifesting, but it's like your mindset, you know. And when you're doing these healing with you know, sounds, you know, how does it affect your mind and your body in ways that we can benefit from it? You know, I'm so nervous, and I got so much stuff going through my head that I wanted to talk to you about. I was like, oh my goodness.
No worries. I'm going to give you a great analogy, and I know you'll understand it. I always say we're kind of like guitars. You know, we have facets of our lives. Those are the strings. We take action through those facets. That's the strumming and the plucking. And then, of course, we produce results. We express ourselves. That's our music. Now, I don't care how masterfully you play the guitar, the game of life. If your strings aren't in tune, are you going to make beautiful music? No. It doesn't matter how well you play. You could play like freaking Andre Segovia or Eddie Van Halen or whatever.
That episode the other night.
You know, you're not going to be able to create what you want to create. The reason why the world is the way that it is and why we struggle so much in our experience is because to one degree or another, we're out of tune, trying to play our music. In other words, express ourselves, fulfill our purpose, make our dreams come true. But if you're in a state of disharmony, I don't care how hard you work, how hard you play, you're not going to create what you want to create. And so the first goal, what did we first learn when we first started learning how to play guitar? How to tune the damn thing. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what you do.
Right, like no matter what you play, it's gonna sound like shit.
Yeah, exactly. And,
you know what I mean? Like the first step is to make sure you're in tune.
Yes.
And that really resonates with me, because I've always been open-minded and open to, like energy healing and things like that too. Not that I dove real deep into it, but I was always super curious about it. And so I believe in that magic and believing in yourself and following through and putting in the hard work that you can, get somewhere. And as you learn more and more, it just starts to get deep. It's like a rabbit hole kind of thing that I'm in. But like with the sound things, like, about the theory that was in the 50s when they were wanting to change the frequency from 440 hertz to 432 hertz. Like
Correct.
There's like a natural Earth's frequency or something that would be capable of healing and possibly even like restoring DNA and things like that. Does that sound familiar to you at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was actually 1947. There was initially, back in the old days, everything was tuned to 432, and then there was a standard that was implemented. And in the studying that I've done during World War II, the Germans started playing music at 440, and then after World War II in 1947, there was a foundation where everything was going to be tuned to 440. Look at all your electronic devices, keyboards or whatever. Even a lot of guitar tuners are all 440. They don't give you the ability to change. So as I started to learn and read more, realizing that was actually a disharmonious frequency and that it actually put people out of tune. We live in a contrasting world experience, and I try not to talk about conspiracies and all that stuff, but there's definitely been...
I do a little bit, so but it's okay.
Oh, I know a lot about that stuff, and let's face it, this is planet contrast. We get to experience empowerment, disempowerment. We get to experience vibrant health. We get to experience sickness, high tide, low tide, new moon, full moon, positive, negative. And we live in this contrasting experience. And whether there's some type of force trying to keep humanity down from expressing its greatness and getting in touch with who we really are, I really think it's part of the game. I used to say, we come here to play the most amazing game in the universe, the cosmic game of hide and seek.
It feels like a game.
Yeah. Take pure, unlimited potential, divine essence, slow it down, cram it into a helpless little baby body, be born. Oh, and then of course you get to forget everything before you came down. So then you're down, pause, totally limited. We have dysfunctional parents, dysfunctional school systems, dysfunctional media things telling you the way life is, this is reality, the whole shot. And then basically what you've done is hidden the divine self, that part that you're talking about getting in touch with.
Right.
And then most of us have a point of something that happens in our lives where we start to go, wait a second, there's something more to life than how I'm living it. So then you start to inquire. And, I think it's a process. I love how Michelangelo was asked, how did you carve David? And he said, I didn't carve David. I just removed the pieces that were hiding the masterpiece. And that's the perfect analogy for life. We're all in the process of removing what's not the truth of who and what we are so that we can experience the masterpiece that we truly are. Whether that's, being hindered by dark, malevolent forces or whatever, or benevolent, or I always get those two confused. Right. Dark forces or whatever, I don't know.
Evil shit, or whatever, maybe.
Yeah. It really is a process of remembering and experiencing. And in order for us to be able to do that, we have to be in tune. And it might bring to question, well, what puts us out of tune? Well, all that stuff in the environment we were talking about, 80,000 man-made chemicals in our air, food, and water, Wi-Fi, smart meters, 5G, 4G, 3G, vibrational barriers. And in case that's not enough, let's go to all the stuff that exists in here. The limiting thoughts, the limiting perceptions. We have to let go of those things.
I feel, this is my opinion, but I feel like we're programmed from birth with a lot.
Absolutely.
Through, religion and the education system and stuff. And, when things are fed to you repeatedly, especially by your parents or your family, and it's, it makes you kind of like who you are. Like if you're born into a Christian family, you're most likely going to be a Christian, or Muslim family, you're most likely going to be a Muslim without choice. It's kind of from birth there that, and it's funny that how all these things are tying together with, like, because this goes back to ancient times with the sound healings and stuff. Because I did a little bit of research. It goes back to ancient Egypt and Greece and like Tibet, and it says vibrations and sound waves can alter brain frequencies. Are you familiar with some of that stuff?
Absolutely.
And reducing stress and anxiety. So there's like, the certain frequencies can calm and promote the healing would be the 432. Now, would that be like what Beethoven and like, Mozart and them used? Like, because if you look at like the past and like the old world or whatever you want to call it, the buildings and the, Tartarian Empire with, they were able to build with, acoustics, perfect acoustic sound resonant, and, they knew something that I feel like we're not too in touch with anymore. But I feel like you are like my savior for this. You know what I mean? Because like and I came across you with coincidence, like just stumbled across you somehow. And
there's been a lot of information that's been suppressed.
Yes.
Libraries that have been burned down. Even how we've been taught about perceptions. Of ancient wisdom traditions and the meaning behind them. And but I think all of that is part of the necessary ingredient of playing the cosmic game of hide and seek.
Okay.
Again, and then at some point, let's say, to use your example, I was a fundamentalist at one time, I was raised Lutheran. And then I, got out of partying and doing all that stuff and took a big pendulum swing over to Christian fundamentalism. And, it was all about judgment. It was all about all this ugly stuff that I saw. And I'm like, wait a second. No. Where's the unconditional love? Where's the non-judgment? Where's the compassion and those aspects? So I had to remove myself out of that.
So it was lacking certain frequencies that you knew that you needed, kind of thing.
Absolutely. Well, I just, if there's hatred and judgment and stuff like that, then that's not in alignment with what, in essence, the story was really about. And then as you dive in, and as I dove in and started to learn more, it's a great metaphoric story. Every character represents a different aspect of who and what we are. And I don't know if you've ever read any of the material from Neville back from the 1950s. In one of his books, the first line is, if you want to do, the biggest mistake you can make is literal interpretation of scripture, and that's how it's interpreted today. But when you start to realize what each individual God, Jesus, each story represents, a story about our psychology, about how we operate and how we function. And you start diving in, well, why were certain books left out? Why was James, like Jesus's brother, cast aside? Actual disciples that hung with the guy. Why were their writings taken out? And Paul, who was a persecutor of Christians, why were his books put in? And how did the Catholic Church get involved? And all these different aspects. And I think, at some point we come to...
I mean, they're good questions, I think why were most of them books left out, because, they have no reasons, I guess,
It could be part of a necessary ingredient of the whole game, of hiding your divine nature.
I think we all have, as humans, we're capable of a lot more than we even can think. Like we're capable. You know what I mean? I'm the kind of guy that really thinks nothing's impossible. I don't think anything's impossible, and nothing would really seem to, blow my mind too much. You know what I mean? Anymore, because what. And this is like programming thinking, you know what I mean? Like, how did they build the pyramids with perfect precision and alignment with the cosmos, you know what I mean? And the cathedrals and things around the world too, and, with the acoustics and perfect sound, and just the massive stone, like the megalithic sites around the world, and at the ancient times, you know what I mean? It's like they knew precision. And I think frequency was involved. I think some kind of something was involved there.
When they worked with sound, and sound makes things lighter.
Yes. Like I seen things levitate, I guess, with some sounds and stuff. And then there's, what do they call it, somatics?
Yep. We used to do this demonstration.
All that stuff's really interesting, to me. And I think it all ties together somehow.
We used to do this demonstration.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. We used to do this demonstration where there would be somebody sitting in a chair, and the chair had 4 legs, and there would be 4 people. Each one would grab a leg, and then they would say, okay, lift them up. And then inevitably it'd be unstable. Somebody's lifting faster than the other person or whatever. And, lucky the guy didn't fall. Then you would push play and play the music. And then it was, okay, repeat lifting him up. And everybody in unison would lift him up. And it was like he was lighter.
Right on.
And, that's what happens when we restore harmony. Okay. But I think a big piece in looking at all these, these so-called negative things, things that we all are aware of to a certain degree in our lives, is to really look at them as an opportunity to reclaim and experience our true divine nature. Because from a quantum physics perspective, we are expressions of a field of energy that is unlimited in its potential. That's the truth of who and what we are.
Yeah.
We are divine expressions of source energy. Okay, whether you call it God, source, higher consciousness, it's all kinds of names. They all fall short of describing it. Right. But I love in some of the Vedic terms that we are a drop in the ocean being the field. We're a specific drop, but everything that's within the ocean is within the drop, which kind of corresponds with what you're talking about, the magnificence and the power that's within you, that's within me, that's within all of us.
Excellent.
And our job is to get in touch with it and to, once again, go back to the analogy, peel back what's not the truth and experience who we really are and live life from that place. And out of that, we evolve. Out of that, we expand. And the universe is basically expanding through each and every one of us, but it would never be able to expand if it didn't create this illusion of forgetfulness. I love how in the story of Adam and Eve was really a story about frequency, about a frequency drop in consciousness that created paradoxes between good and bad, clothed and unclothed, and one representing feminine aspect, one representing masculine aspect of what? Of energy, of polarity. And how that story in Genesis is really a story about the frequency drop of consciousness of humanity into this world of paradoxes, into this world of high and low, day and night, high tide, low tide, new moon, full moon, all of those aspects that give us this ability to experience and evolve. And, the negative stuff gets a bad rap, but, if I look at a AA battery, it has a positive and a negative terminal, and it won't shine the light without both.
Right. Like, it's like the opposite and equal reaction or whatever was that quote, every reaction has a
Yeah.
an opposite reaction, or like as above, as below kind of thing too, maybe, if you will.
Very true.
It's you're a fascinating person. You're really smart too. Like I love talking to you. It's really cool.
I've had my moments.
We all do. But so you were involved with NASA a little bit, like you were saying about, like, and you got into quantum physics
Almost 20 years ago, before it became cool. So
Right
I didn't work for NASA.
You were a geek, like a nerd or something, a little bit.
Well,
You were like, hey guys, let's go do
I
some
didn't
quantum
want to
physics.
be. I didn't want to be a geek and a nerd. I always jokingly
No,
say,
there's nothing wrong with it either. I mean,
no, there isn't. I mean, I probably was. I remember, as a kid, I always wanted to be the studly kid, but I was like a pud who wanted to be a stud,
Right on. Yeah.
And
That's
so,
part
no,
of
the
programming
science,
too, I think, is it's kind of embedded there a little bit.
polarities, once
Yeah,
again,
man. Totally.
But no,
Yeah.
the scientist that discovered the energy in my music was a former top consultant to NASA. That was his background. And he was the one that introduced the gift to me, or made me aware of it.
Yeah.
And then from there, it was just a series of downloads of information. Oh, just play music or create music to help harmonize the environment. And then I started getting
That's so
into
cool.
help create music to help people change their internal programming.
I love that.
Because your mind is your operating system software. It's what codes your experience. It's what creates the picture of the world around you. If you want to change that, quit brushing the damn mirror and put the brush to your head. Change your thoughts, change your beliefs, change your state of being, your frequency, and you will begin to change your experience. And so
I've noticed that to be true in my own life, actually, with some personal experiences, like, for instance, even just starting this podcast was, totally out of nowhere, because, like, I was really depressed and down, like, I wasn't getting out of bed, I was having a really hard time, you know what I mean, like, really no drive, and, like, playing guitar was the only thing that I could, like, do to, like, escape a lot. I'd close my eyes and I could just play and just, like, for an hour or more, or however long I needed to do it. And, like, sometimes I had better days where I could get in that zone quicker, you know what I mean, or like some days I can't really find that zone as good, or you know what I mean, like that zen like place where you're feeling it, you know what I mean, and letting it rip, whether it's right or wrong, or it's like there's no wrong notes necessarily, it's just like you just feel good about what's happening.
It's that magical, and I think music does this, especially for the artist, but I think also for listeners, it's a way to be able to quiet the mind and all the mental chatter and get connected to what's behind, what's observing the thoughts. Because you have an ego mind, a conscious mind, or whatever, that part of us that's meant to keep us alive. But behind that, there's something that's vast. Behind that, there's something that's connected in. Behind that, I think it really comes from the heart space as opposed to the head space where we spend most of our time.
Both powerful tools, I think there were some studies that your heart actually puts out quite a bit of energy or something.
A field, much bigger than this.
Right, like, your thoughts go out and they're out there, like your energy and stuff is out there. Is that, like, do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we could see through our physical eyes the energy that we put out from us, we would be very much more mindful about what we focus our thoughts upon. And, we would be much more aware. But we're beginning to become more and more aware of that. We're beginning to become more and more aware of that.
You don't
our
feel
level
like it's
of
a slow
awareness.
process that people should be waking up sooner?
Well, you know what? That's what were we talking about at the beginning of the call, man? Patience, right?
I really do appreciate your patience, man.
Life unfolds in its own time and space.
I really do appreciate your time today too, and to talk with me and everything. And,
My pleasure.
yeah, man. I have a couple more questions for you though, if you don't mind.
Sure, go for it.
If you're into it, cool. Do you have a website or anything that you want to, that people can find you at, like that you want to put out there or anything like that? You can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let us know where our listeners can find you and stuff, and how they can learn more about you.
Sure, you can go to Mark with a K, Romero, Romero, music.com. MarkRomeromusic.com. That's a great place to dive in. And then, of course, on YouTube, at Mark Romero Music. Same thing with Instagram and Facebook. But YouTube is my primary social media channel. So, yeah, MarkRomeromusic.com.
Perfect. I'm glad we got that out of the way. Also, like, let me check my notes here real quick, okay? Because like I got so many things running through my head right now, it's unbelievable.
That's all right.
So your story is throwing me off a little bit too, so I'm having a hard time with this. I'm wrapping my head around this. Like, so
it's already throws me off sometimes too.
You got discovered playing guitar through some quantum physics people like NASA and stuff, and they heard what you were playing. Do you remember what you were playing at the time? Like, you know, can you give us a little taste of maybe what?
Well, they discovered the frequencies in my first album, but it's something that comes through. This was
an album that you put together on your own, just out of wanting to do something and have it be yours, and
I just an album that I produced for fun. My neighbor was a professional drummer. And
perfect. You guys, are you on the West Coast?
Yeah.
See, man, like, dude, I swear I was going to come to LA, man. Just I'm bringing my guitar and stuff, because you guys are all like, look at Sunset Boulevard or whatever, like Slash and everybody, and all these people were living on the same road, and like, you know, in the 80s especially, like, seemed like everybody was great.
Yeah, but all those people were just from somewhere else, you know.
True.
You know, but you know, my neighbor was just he just said to me one day, "Hey, man, you've been talking about making this album. Let's make it. I'll produce it. I'll play drums, and I got a buddy of mine that'll give us a bro deal on studio time." Wow. And we made the album, and that album was the album that got in the hands of the scientists from NASA.
Wow. And what are the chances of that? You know,
like I said, I couldn't have planned that in, you know, a million years. And then from there, this is almost 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
And then from there, I just started getting all these different downloads.
Can I ask how old you are?
I'm 63.
Are you really? Man, you look totally good for 63, bro. I'm 43, so
20 years. Yeah, you're a young pup, man.
Years ago, and then 30 years ago and stuff. It's far out.
Yeah. So no, and my inspiration for playing the music, I went to go see Pink Floyd, The Wall.
Did you see him live?
1980 at the LA Sports Arena.
Oh, wow.
And it was after that, Dad, you got to give me a guitar. Dad, birthday's coming up, guitar.
For me, it was I was at home and I was watching MTV on the floor, sitting there Indian style, and Eddie Van Halen came out with his pink pants on and sat on the edge of the stage and did all that, you know, and I was like, wow, that's what you know, just lit something. And like, I was just drawing the guitars ever since then, like, you know, and rock and roll and a lot of heavy metal stuff too, you know, like just.
Well, as you start getting older, you mellow out a little bit. Maybe don't play so loud.
Man, like, I don't know. I'm just ready to go even harder and faster yet.
Yeah, but you're still looking over the edge of the crib, man.
Oh wow, I appreciate that. Yeah, I hear you, man.
It's all good. It's all good. All part of the process.
Yeah. So listen here. Tell me if you know what this is. Little tongue drums.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it.
So that would be considered like something along the hands of, or in the line of energy healing or something like that, right?
So I'm going to share a piece with you that'll help you in your expression of your music moving forward. And way back in the day, I had a friend of mine said, "Hey, you know, you should go check out this website. They're doing this event out in Santa Fe, New Mexico on sound healing." This is like 18 years ago. So I go to the website, I check it out, a bunch of boring ass scientist dudes talking about sound, and I'm like, oh my God, there's no way I'm sitting through 2.5 days of that. But then one guy on that video said something that opened up a whole new world for me. And he said, sound is the carrier wave for intention. And I'm like, I got these shivers, full body shiver thing. Oh my gosh.
Like, yeah.
You can program music with your intention, and then music becomes the vessel in which gets it out into the world.
Oh, wow.
And see, because even if you do any type of energy work or anything like that, you need to have some sort of vessel that'll bring it into the third dimensional experience.
Okay.
Music is great because obviously we can hear it, but then music and sound itself has a inherent ability to bypass the left brain, all that critical thinking, analysis of paralysis, whatever you want to call it, and to penetrate the very fiber, heart and soul of the listener without, it doesn't even matter what language they speak, because you're bypassing all that. That's the great gatekeeper. That's the thing that gets in our way of being able to achieve greatness is the damn little stories that go on between our own heads. Well, music has the ability to move into that space without the gatekeeper, bypasses the gatekeeper. And then you can program it. You want to put more love into a song, put more love into a song. You want to put more compassion into a song, put more compassion. And there's a book that came out maybe 10 years ago called Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. And he went and studied and measured the vibrational quality of different types of music. Music created with hate lyrics, with hate intention. And music like Mozart and Beethoven created with love and compassion, and how it vibrated on a scale, and that's where I really became aware that who we are and what we are and what we put into our music and our expressions shines and reflects out into the world, so it's like who we are matters.
What was that book again?
I'm sorry?
What was that book called again?
Power versus Force. Dr. David Hawkins.
Yeah.
It's an older book, maybe 10, 15 years old now, something like that. But he did a whole calibration. He created a whole scale from 0 to 1,000. 0 being the bottom of the scale, 1,000 being like enlightenment, Jesus Christ type 5. And everything below 200 took away energy from the person. Everything above 200 gave energy to the person. So like Mozart, Beethoven calibrated high, like 600 on the scale. Rap music with hate lyrics and stuff like that calculated 100, 150, took energy away. And I'm not picking on rap music because there's definitely very talented rap music, but I'm talking about the intention behind the music.
And the mindset or the intention also, I think that's important, and I'm glad you said that, you know what I mean? Because I don't really like to admit it much, but I was like a little bit of a negative, younger, teenager. I was negative and kind of.
Welcome to the club.
I wouldn't say hate-filled or anything like that, but just kind of miserable and just not, I was like.
You were.
Anyway, I didn't like who I was, the way I was thinking, and like who I was becoming. You know what I mean? Because like I just knew. That wasn't me, you know what I mean? Like it was like I was, never like one to hurt somebody's feelings and stuff, because I've always been pretty sensitive myself, you know what I mean? Like I feel a lot of emotions a lot. Like I'm, I don't know if it's an Aquarius thing or what, but it's
nobody's perfect.
And like, and I went through a lot of things in life too that weren't necessarily the easiest, you know what I mean? But we all have our, stories and such. But with the depression and everything, and it gets so dark, it's like, where do you turn and what? So when you start to look into it, and you say, oh, you can do it with sound, and a lot of people will say, well, that's too easy, or that's too good to be true. And I think that's a problem because, you know, for one, for it to work, you have to be open. You know what I mean? You have to allow it to work and to come in or out, you know, is important. So, you know, if you don't start there, it's like you're saying you can't, like looking at something and saying you can't, you know, I can't do that. But if you go into stuff with the mindset of thinking, you know, yeah, I can do that, you know, and that's kind of like how I started to think and stop myself. Almost just about every time I'm thinking about something, like, wait, that's a programmed way of thinking about stuff. Let me, like, so it's been like 3 months now. I've been like, since I started this podcast, and it changed my drive, you know, when I came up with this theory and all this stuff, you know, like, but I had drive to start this podcast or whatever, and it changed, you know, the way I felt and the way I was looking at things, and, you know, just your quality of life in a way, you know, just to be able to, you know, be yourself. I was always afraid to be myself, you know, like truly yourself in front of everybody, because, you know, you get judged, or,
yeah, of course,
not good enough, or, you know, the basic way of thinking, or, you know, not that everybody thinks that way, but like a lot of us feel like we're not good enough, or, you know, people are better, and people will, you know, judge you or whatever, and it kind of like, you know, it's kind of like it's blocking your frequencies a little bit, you know what I mean? So I had to learn how to rethink about things and let them frequencies back in.
And it's a lifelong undertaking. Dude, you're never going to be done. You're always going to be peeling back the layers, peeling back the pieces that aren't the truth of who you are, if you're committed to that. But yeah, you're right. There has to be a willingness on the individual, and they have to set an intention themselves. I remember one of my favorite emails, this woman wrote me an email, is there any way you can make a song that'll make my husband a better man? I'm like, okay, I am a husband, so I understand that email, you know?
For sure.
But, you know, I'm like, you know, I go, I could play the most beautiful piece of music in the universe, but if your husband doesn't want to become a better man, it's not going to matter.
Right. You have to.
So it's a collaborative dance between the listener and, in this case, the music. It's a collaborative dance. I always ask people to set an intention. You have to set an intention. Be willing and open to change, to heal, to transform, to rise up. You know, I've been where you were talking about, in the depression, the dark nights, drug use, all that stuff. And then at some point I said, you know what? No, there's something more to life, and I need to start picking myself up. I need to start resolving issues of things that had happened in my past, and letting go of the anger and the resentment and the pissed offness and all that stuff.
And, you know, some anger and stuff, you know, like, not an angry person typically, but there's things deep down inside that really hurt and really make me feel angry, you know what I mean? Or like I want to cry or whatever, you know. It's just like it paralyzes you, you know what I mean? So it's like a mental issue, and like, you know,
it can, but it can also set you free. It can also be the catalyst for transformation and evolution. It can also, you know, your challenges can be your biggest rung in the ladder to lift you to new heights.
Right. That's cool. I dig that, you know, and I agree with that. You know, it's sometimes you gotta go through hell before you get to heaven, they kind of say, or something. You know, it's like, or what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, or something like that. You know.
Oh yeah, I've been there, done that.
I'm tired of hearing that shit once in a while. It's like, you know what? I'm tired of hearing, like, take that positive and shove it up here for a minute, because right now I'm in a bad mood. You know,
or I'm feeling
you
down,
have days where you're in a bad mood too, and like, is there anything that you do special for yourself to, you know, do you also like treat yourself to your
oh yeah, absolutely. But I think the most important thing
I could do like on a daily basis, or anybody, like, you know, can you help me?
The biggest piece is feel your feelings.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of, though, man, because my feelings are heavy, man.
Well, yeah, those are the heavier ones. But remember, we've all been blessed with this ability to move and command energy. Feelings are just frequencies of energy. Light frequencies feel like bliss and ecstasy and happiness and joy, all the quote good things in life. And then sadness, anger, frustration, those are the heavier frequencies, slower vibrational frequencies of energy. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether it's heavy or light, you have the ability to command it. So the most important thing you can do is feel your sadness. Man, feel it, but be intentional. You know what? I'm setting the intention to move through this and let it go.
That's an important point. Right
Breathe
there.
It out, let it go.
Yeah.
Command it. Then dive into the emotion and the feeling of it. And the most important thing you can do is suspend your judgment of it. Who in the hell said sadness or tears are bad? That's a limiting belief. No,
it's just kind of programmed in your head to think, oh, he's, or whatever. Or,
yeah, men don't cry. Yeah, that's why.
Whatever.
Yeah, and that's why men die earlier than women. Because we hold all our lower density stuff in, and we don't allow ourselves to feel.
I think I cried more than any other human being, like male human being in the world. I feel like that way sometimes.
Well, I don't know. I might be in the running with you, man.
Every single day, at least one time, like a day for almost like 6 or 7 years. Every single day.
You know what?
I was like, man, I gotta stop. Like I had to I was trying to figure out how to control my emotions and stuff, and because I just got so disgusted with living like that.
Yeah,
it was unnecessary, you know what I mean? But it was necessary, I guess, in a way, because I don't know, I don't know how to explain that, but it was exhausting, mentally and emotionally exhausting to the point where this gets pretty ugly.
I'll end with this one thought that my mom shared with me about tears. She said, "Son, we cry so that we can cleanse our eyes and see life more clearly." I'm like, damn, I didn't appreciate it as a teenager.
We never do.
But I appreciate it now. And you know what? Feel your stuff, man, because otherwise it's still reverberating within you. And if you hold on to it long enough, it's going to show up as a physical disharmony, cancer, health condition, whatever. And, we want to be able to move through our emotions, our frequencies.
Mark, you're the man, brother. Thanks for your time and your patience today. I really, really am happy with you, taking the time to do this today.
Hey, man, my pleasure. And just sending you all kinds of good vibes as you move into this podcast experience. Yeah, remember, man, it's the new model.
It seems busy, but it's not. So, I feel like there's so much going on, but there's really not. It's I know when I get up on stage and play guitar, sometimes it's time flies by, and it's you rush through it, and it's you didn't even, you weren't even there, but maybe we can talk again sometime if you want.
That'd be great.
I would love that. So, feel free to hit me up anytime, and I'm gonna post your stuff up on I'm gonna blast you on social media and stuff too, and give me a good shout out, and just thanks again, man. Really, really appreciate you taking the time today and your patience, and
my pleasure.
Being so cool, being such a cool dude.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for having me, and have a great day and all that good stuff.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. I really do appreciate you.
All righty.
See ya.
Okay, take care.
All right. Let's see if I know how to work this now.